I was always interested in psychedelics, even from teenage years in high school. I'd read all the books in the library, and I'd read a book about ayahuasca. So when I was 15, so it took me maybe 2 or 3 years to locate, and then and then I found it and drank with some Italian ex-barista named, I probably can't name him. In Gunungary, of all places.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay, so you said that you started reading books about psychedelics. So you read a book about ayahuasca when you were 15.
Yeah.
But then it wasn't until you were like in your mid-30s that you actually had the chance.
33
to drink it.
Yeah.
And it took you a couple of years to find, you said.
Yeah. I was always kind of keeping an ear on the ground for it, but it's hard to come by. And then I met an Irish comedian who had drunk with this guy. And so I managed to get his email off this dude, yeah.
So had you come back from England and set the intention of, I would like to...
No, like I said...
I'm just trying to understand how 15-year-old you and then 35-year-old you, like those ideas around that type of psychedelic link up.
I mean, the weird thing was I was always reading books about spirituality. And the weirdest thing was actually in my routine, I had this whole bit about how I wasn't really a comedian. I was a spiritual healer. And then I'd go around fake healing people and pretending to pull stuff out of them.
In the audience?
Yeah, in the audience. And this was before I even stumbled upon ayahuasca. So subconsciously, I think I actually had that plan at the back of my head. And I was reading books about shamanism and tantra and all these weird occult subjects all the way through. But I just never thought that I'd end up practicing. For some weird reason, I was just always attracted to it. And so when I got properly called, I was like, oh shit, okay. Like I was just like, I couldn't believe it, I was refusing to believe it, yeah.
So then what was your first time with ayahuasca like?
I got shown, firstly, all the times I've been a dickhead to my ex-girlfriends, but from their point of view, and stuff I didn't even remember doing because I was just, a pretty unconscious, mindless dude. And so I had to make a few phone calls the next day and make some apologies. And they were like, oh, thank you, but I don't remember that happening either. I was like, yeah, neither did I until I started last night. And then I also had a encounter with the guy in intelligence, which like a hologram of Mother Earth. That's all I can really explain it. And it was like a very deep, profound connection to the Earth consciousness. And she just said, help me. I was like, oh, but what can I do? And then she was like, help me. And then I was like, okay, all right, I'll do my best. And then, that was the first. So it wasn't a huge, it was very profound, but what I realized was like, oh shit, this is what I've been searching for all those times I used to take heaps of acid at music festivals and stuff like that. I was actually looking for a ceremonially held medicine experience. Yeah.
And how did it progress from there then? How did you go from sitting one ceremony to working in the field? So
then I was like, I got to do that again. I came out of that one saying, man, I got to do that again. That was, I need to go deeper. So maybe a month later, I found a different guy down in Victoria and I drank with him. The first night was, whatever, pretty average experience. The third night I had a full-blown exorcism and I had what I can only describe as a malefic entity removed from my solar plexus. And that was like a very full-on death experience and very profound, just confrontation with death.
That's so specific. An entity removed from your solar plexus. How do you know it was from that part of your body?
Oh, because it was getting pulled out of me. Yeah. I was I was yelling at it. I was yelling at it, get out of me. And it was like, I won't get out. It was this whole, and then I was realizing that the more negative energy and more resistance I gave, the stronger it became. And so I had to then send love to it. And then I had to accept my death. And then I basically had this communication with, I don't know if it was the ayahuasca spirit or great spirit, but I got given a very clear bargain. It said, we'll take this thing out of you, but you have to live for other people. You have to stop being such a self-centered fuck. Those are my words, but I got a big proper talking to that experience, getting told where I was out of alignment and just saying, because, the lifestyle of a comedian is pretty selfish, It's like me. Hey, what's the deal with me and my thing? And so I got this big ego slap where I was getting told over and over again, just get over yourself. You're not as great as you think you are. It was a comedian ego, you know? So, which is often founded on very deep wounds.
Brittle.
Yeah, brittle
foundation.
complete lack of self-worth. You know, it's like, what is it? My friend describes comedians as self-hating narcissists. So, and the message I got, because my intention was like, how do I become a better comedian? And the message I got was like, stop, it's killing you. And I booked my ticket to America to go give it a shot. I got a 6-month visa. I got everything arranged. And I just got told, it's not going to work out because you're a fucking mess and you need to work out your shit. Otherwise, nothing's going to go right because your outside world is a reflection of your internal world. So until you deal with that, buddy, you're fucked. And then I got this big message, go reconnect with your roots, go back to Nepal, go do some charity work, like live for other people. And so the day before I left, the Nepal earthquake happened, like 10,000 people died. So I was like, so I canceled my flight to America, got a one-way flight to Nepal, and then did 5 months of like earthquake relief work. And that was pretty intense. It was a real eye-opener though. I think every comedian should go work in a disaster area. It was very humbling and also just healthy. Like I was part of a community working towards like a common goal. And
What kind of stuff did you see?
just fucking destruction, man. I didn't go in straight away, so I didn't see any like carnage, thank fuck. But like, you know, we were working in this town called Malamchi, which was like 90% of all the buildings have been destroyed. So you're like living in this rubble town, and then we're excavating like fallen down schools and houses and helping build shelters and stuff. And well, you just saw really real stuff. Like I really put into perspective, you know, my Western first world problems. Like, oh no, my comedy career isn't working out. And then we're building like temporary shelters to protect the orphan children from sex traffickers who were coming into the area to like basically kidnap kids because they didn't have parents and then just sell them on the sex market. And that really puts into perspective how whatever you're bitching about really is not small potatoes, you know? And so it was a massive like sobering up. Also, I had an amazing time. It sounds horrible because it was based on the tragedy of many people's lives, but it was very eye-opening, and you know, had the time of my life. Don't know about the people whose little houses had collapsed. Anyway, and then after that, I felt the spiritual benefits of karma yoga. I was like, in service, I get it now, ayahuasca, I've got to be in service. So then I went and did charity work at the hostel, the Mother Teresa Home for the Destitute and Dying, so I was working with terminally ill homeless people who were dying. And that was really confronting, but that's kind of what I was after. I wanted to see that sort of stuff. And so, so I helped a man die, and then it was very full on. I've never actually held someone's hand while they died. If anyone wants to try it, I highly recommend it. I think everyone should go through that experience because it really just goes, oh, this is going to happen to me. And this is happening to this guy right now. And I was doing this Tibetan form of meditation called Tonglen, which is where you take the person's energy on. And man, I just started tripping just from contact from I don't know, just I was holding his hand, and I was like a DMT experience, like without the visuals, but I was like going through this huge energetic shift. And I'll never forget feeling his chest after he'd passed away, and it was like fully fizzing, and I could feel this huge energy ball. And then this is where the story gets weird. That night I went back to my auntie's place where I was staying, and I was in a pretty morbid mood because I didn't even know the guy's name, because like 40 minutes later he was in the cremation oven, and then I just left the cremation place. And I remember walking around just going, this is totally a simulation, this place isn't real. Like I remember just everything being so unreal. And then I went home and started morbidly fixating on death. And I thought, you know what, I think actually originally I was going to go see the new Star Wars. So I was like, you know what, I think I'm going to see the new Star Wars. You know, it's just not healthy for me to sit in a room and think about death. So halfway through the movie, now this is where you're going to have to stretch your imagination, but I swear it happened. Right where Han Solo gets murdered by Kylo Ren, I had this fucking full-on spiritual experience. Like it was like an ayahuasca flashback. I was re-downloading this entire ayahuasca experience, but parts of the journey I didn't even remember at the time. And I had these two voices speak to me, and one said, "You work for us now," and the other one said, "Don't forget what we told you." And there was this huge download of information from that last ayahuasca journey I had that I didn't remember at the time because it was, I don't know, buried, but it got unlocked. And I remember it because those voices sounded like they were outside of my head. Like I couldn't tell the difference between inside and outside. So I had this full-on, and then at the same time, I was seeing the man I'd helped die again over and over again. And it was a really full-on experience. And
this is happening in the movie theater.
This is happening in the movie theater. And and I got this big message about how we're moving into very crazy times and you can't sit on a fence anymore. And you got to pick a side. So I still look back on that and like, what does that mean? Like, I'm a bit more critical of the vision because the vision I got was very heavily imbued with Star Wars, which is about the forces of light and the forces of darkness, and, you know. But still, it was a very strange experience that I had, and it really was like I felt like the first time I got called to some kind of spiritual work. And also, it was interesting because I wasn't on ayahuasca. All I'd done was help a guy fucking die that day, you know. And
that's pretty spiritual.
Yeah, it's very spiritual, and then so spiritual. Except for that guy, I don't know.
Well, I think it is. Like being in the presence of death, the veil is very thin between this world and whatever is beyond.
Although the thing which struck me was both after leaving the crematorium and both after leaving the movie theater, I remember just walking around, just going, "This place is not real. Like this is a hologram. Like everything seemed like a cardboard cutout." I was so convinced, like, like the veil was really thin. And I was like, this is totally a simulation, you know? And I hadn't even learned about simulation theory and all this sort of, all the quantum shit yet. So that really spun me out. And then I was like, okay, I need to drink more ayahuasca. I need to get to South America. But I still had that ticket to America and I still had the 6-month visa in America. So I thought, how about I just go by America? Because I still hadn't fully let go of my comedy dream at that point. I was like, I'll just go over there and, you know, I got this visa, I may as well, and I can probably get an illegal job somewhere and make a bit of money and continue my way to South America from there. And so I went to America and, I got this big message, I need to drink straight away, like it's time to drink. And so I managed to locate a circle, which luckily enough was with a really awesome dude, shaman, who has since passed away. But he was like an Italian ex-bodybuilder who was like a cross between Anthony Robbins and ayahuasquero. Like he would give you motivation speeches in the middle of
Oh my God.
But he was a really powerful dude. He was like tonight's is going to be a success. And he'd give you, everyone would have this pep talk. Like it was totally a cult, but he was a really cool guy. And that was the journey where I got told very clearly, no, you're serving the medicine. And my grandfather was a herbalist, and I could only describe what felt like his genes turning on in me. It was like this light switch on my DNA was turned on, and all of a sudden I was like, oh fuck, I've actually got this in me. Like, oh yeah, I've got this. This is in my blood, actually, this kind of work. And it was like I wouldn't say like I met his physical ghost or spirit. That happened later when I did Iboga, but it was more like his field or his presence became activated in me. And my mum would always tell me that I actually was out of all the people in the family, I'm very much similar to my granddad, who I never met because he died of a heart attack on April Fools. So there's another weird
You are similar to him.
Yeah. So, well, hopefully I won't die on April Fools at the age of 50, but...
just the Joker, you know?
Sorry?
The Joker.
Yeah. So...
The practical Joker.
Well, practical Joker, and my dad was a clown, so it's all this weird, I don't know, man, some weird karmic fucking loop that I'm in for this one.
Yeah, it's funny how the more you live, the more things start to make sense. Like the more time the puzzle pieces have to come together.
Dude, I never even made the connection between the circus family background and comedy until last year when I was thinking about getting back into it again. And then I talked to my uncle and he was like, yeah, Dad, your dad was a clown and he used to do comedy skits in his 20s. I was like, what? I never knew this. I was like, fuck. I'm just like my dad. I'd never even realized that. And then he was like, yeah, but then he quit and some part of him died on the inside. And I was like, oh shit, that's kind of what happened to me. So that's kind of what got me back into it. But Yeah, so then that was the one where I was like, okay, I have to do this. So I went back to Australia and I was like, oh, I ran out of money, so I couldn't get to South America. And I was like, okay, I'll just go back to Australia. But I didn't know where to start. And
So you didn't make it to South, you did make it to South America? You just
no, I ran out of money.
Yeah, okay.
And so the plan was to go back to Australia, make enough money to go back to South America. And then what happened? Oh, and then I was just kind of running away from the responsibility of doing the job because it started hitting me like, oh shit, really? This is going to be really hard.
Yeah, I'm going to be serving people medicine.
Yeah, I did one trip where it showed me all the shit that I have to sort out myself. And it was very confronting. Like, it's like, you have to work through this stuff and this stuff and this stuff and this stuff and this stuff, this stuff, this stuff. And it was just like, even the shaman who I sat with the second time, he recognized me, but I didn't realize he'd recognized me. But he said, he told me, you've got a lot of work to do. And I was like, why is he saying that to me? And so I ran away for about 8 months, but then life became like one long ongoing panic attack. And then
Where'd you run away to?
I was just like not living anywhere. I was sort of moving around heaps. I would sleep on people's couches. I was doing a lot of charity work. I was really sort of addicted to the whole charity work thing. So I was working for Sea Shepherds in the kitchens there. And then I went down to Tasmania. I was kind of doing a few gigs here and there. But it was this weird interim period where I would be going on stage just going, I don't know who I am anymore, like having this weird identity crisis because my old comedy self, who was very dark and depressive, wasn't really fitting the bill anymore. And then finally I gave in and had a drink, and then it was like, no, you're definitely doing this. And then I didn't look back from there. Yeah.
So what was the first circle that you held as the head shaman like?
Look, I was never saying that I was I had imposter syndrome for the first year. I was just like, hey, look, if you want to, I talked to a teacher of mine, and he was just like, just start small, just start with your friends. If they want to do it, just do it for them for free, or, or get them to pay for the Airbnb or whatever, or the house, or do it at their house, or so yeah, that's the first thing I remember. I did it in this earth ship in Tasmania. Yeah, Tasmania, just for some friends of mine. And it was just an impromptu circle, and really didn't know what I was doing. Look back at my music playlist, I cringe a bit. But that was a start. And then probably for about 2-3 years I was just doing just friends and friends of friends, maybe anywhere between one-on-ones to like 5-6 people, and just sort of working it out as I went along, and also just drinking a lot of medicine as well at the advice of a teacher, and then also training with other people as well, and then just doing as much medicine as I could, finding different people to sit.
What's the training like? Because you hear a lot about that. I mean, like in my interaction with people that serve medicine, it's always about like the training and like going into the Amazon and working with these like indigenous healers, and like it just seems like it's like a bit of a boot camp.
Yeah, I mean,
is that what it's like?
Mine wasn't a traditional training, because usually in traditional trainings you'd stick with one lineage, or you'd move around, but it would be like, you're training in ayahuasca, so you go sit with these people for a while, a few years maybe, and then you go sit with these other people. For me, I was jumping around. I was trying ayahuasca, and then acacia, which doesn't have any lineage because it's Australian. Maybe it has an Aboriginal lineage, but that stuff is quite secret and you can't really talk about it. So I'd say my training wasn't as like traditional in the respect, like say old school shamans. I was reading about how you do these things called dietas. I've done a few of these dietas. They're basically, you go into the woods for 10 days, you take this plant, and then you, a lot of isolation and a lot of just purification. And, the old stories of these guys that go into the bush for like, 10, 15, 20 years, dieting with these different plants. Nowadays, you can diet with these plants for 10 days, but back then they diet with these plants for like up to 1 or 2 years, like alone in the jungle. So obviously that's probably not that practical these days.
When you say diet, you mean just taking the plant?
Well, yeah, you're kind of in isolation. You're eating a very plain diet. of like, say, rice and lentils, maybe some fish, plantains, very simple food, not much food either, like one meal a day, maybe a cup of soup, no onion, no garlic. There's all these like, you can't have sex, you can't even have sexual thoughts sometimes. Obviously no masturbation, no eating certain foods, and you're kind of just sitting in the woods. It's kind of like a vision quest, if you've ever done a vision quest. So the idea is like you're purifying yourself, and your senses become very sensitive. Like you realize once you go out into a place and you have no stimulation, and also very little stimulation in the way of, like, we couldn't use toothpaste, we couldn't use soap, all these things which basically open up your senses, and you become very, very sensitive. Like your awareness does increase. And then on top of that, there's many different ways to structure dieta, and I'm by no means an expert on them, but the ones I did, you drink ayahuasca 4 times in the space of 11 days. And then depending on the plants that you're working with, you might take that every day. Other plants, like I dieted with Chiricsananga, you take for the first 5 days.
What's that plant?
It's called it's Brunfelsia grandiflora. It's the yesterday, today, and tomorrow plant, the plant with the purple, white, and pink flowers. No. Well, it's a plant which they say cleans from your bones out. It's very good for back issues. It teaches you lessons about integrity. It's a very strict plant, so you can't fuck around. Because if you do what they call cross a dieta, which is where you fuck up, you might eat pork, or you might have sex, or you might do something which breaks the rules of the dieta, it can really fuck you up. Like I've heard stories of people getting really, really sick or not being right in the head for 7 years, sometimes for the rest of their lives. So it's not to be messed with. And yeah, for that one, it was quite funny. I couldn't eat anything cold for a month afterwards. I couldn't eat any sugars. I couldn't have any sexual dreams. I asked the shaman, how do I not have a sexual dream? He said, well, when you're having one, you just wake up and you stop. And I was like, okay. And then sure enough, a week later, I had a sexual dream, woke up, stopped. And so there's all these sort of little, that's a whole huge... And what the guy did was he sung the plant spirit into me, which felt like I was in a Xerox machine, and I felt the presence of the plant, which is very interesting because it didn't feel like ayahuasca. This was completely different plant intelligence, and it was like being abducted on a UFO or something like that. Just really, I could feel it completely merging with my system. And after that, he was a presence in my life, like a sort of a life coach voice in my head. And that was just one plant. Some of these like vegetalista shamans, they have like hundreds of these plants inside of them. And so the idea is that they have the whole medicine of the forest inside of them. And then these plants teach you magic healing songs if you're geared that way, or healing techniques if they sense that you've done the work and you're ready for it. And you download these songs from these interdimensional realms, and then you can sing them in your ceremony, and that way you can realign people's energies and heal them. And so
whoa,
it was really crazy. When I had that, I was like, whoa, this is like advanced ancient technology. Like everyone's always talking about transhumanism, like trying to fuse with robots and stuff like that. I'm like, these guys have been fusing it for plants in a very highly sophisticated, like, plant sonic technology, and for centuries, probably millennium. So that really blew me away. So yeah, there was a lot of purification involved. But again, I wouldn't say I did my training, if I'm to be quite honest, very well. I didn't have a full-time teacher telling me what to do, what not to do. Probably because I wouldn't have listened. So I was sort of feeling my way, and I made I had some horrible times. Yeah.
What were some of your biggest initiations?
Initiations is a difficult term, because there's, on the one hand, there's the self-initiations in the West, which aren't held by the community. They're just like what we seek out ourselves to find our edge. But a big part of actual initiation is being recognized by the community as moving up a level or having gone through something. So this is why it's very hard to actually go through a quote-unquote, like, proper initiation in the West because we don't really have any proper rites that have been systematized or
I agree with that, actually. I think like even just the really simple initiations, and maybe this is going to sound quite conceited after what we've just been talking about, but I think every girl in their life has this one guy, excuse me, if they're heterosexual, they have this one guy who they've like been sleeping with for a really long amount of time, and that guy hasn't been showing them the respect of a relationship, but they hang on for dear God because they just think he's going to one day wake up and realize like, oh, it's you, it's always been you.
Yeah.
And like every woman I know,
that guy.
yeah, you probably have, you know, and maybe I've been that girl for someone else, but every woman I know that really has something to share and teach in the space of femininity and sacred relationships and like, just healthy relating in general has had that experience, and that's a real initiation, I think.
Yeah.
And it's not on the level of like this plant stuff. It's like it's a different, more Western, secular, whatever, like the culture.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's initiation, and you go through it, and it teaches you a lot about yourself. And it's a real ego death. It's like getting to the end of like a situationship with someone, and then going, "Fuck, why did I put myself through that? Like, is that really the barometer for my self-worth?" And coming out the other side of that with all the lessons, but then the only other people that recognize you in the community and give you that kind of like, "Oh, I see you, sis," are the other women around that have had the same experience.
Yeah.
So it's not like you get to walk around with this sash being like, I've survived situationship.
Yeah.
And it kind of makes the integration of those lessons like harder in a way.
Yeah.
So like, is this even a big thing? Like, we should be giving each other fucking pats on the back for more shit.
Yeah, but give people what?
Pats on the back for more shit.
Yeah. I definitely been through toxic relationships where you come out the other side. It's like a veil has been lifted. You're like, oh my God, why did I put up with that for so long?
Yeah. What?
I don't know. I think sometimes the only way you remember a lesson is to have it drilled into your head really deeply.
That's true. And ain't nothing like heartbreak to wake you up to yourself.
Well, I think the heartbreak also opens you up on a heart level to a deeper understanding of the pain. The pain is also a way of awakening you to waking you up, you know?
That's true.
Yeah. So, but I not that I'm trying to downplay your experience, but from what I've studied with the initiations in like indigenous societies, like, I guess that's valid. Yeah. It has to take you to the edge of your being.
I mean, I was hesitant to bring that up, but it came through me. So I was like, this feels worth sharing.
Yeah.
In terms of what you were saying about like personal initiations, like getting to know yourself a layer deeper, and then being like, wait, was that a thing? Like, can I get like,
seen.
you know, can I get seen or
recognized?
Can I get a little badge, a little token like they do in the AA when it can come up to 50 days, and you're like, 50 days without fucking that dude who doesn't respect me. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, our initiations in like the West, in like this culture that we live in, are gonna always be different to what they do to initiate their community.
Yeah, of course.
Because it has to be relevant to the time.
Yeah, it's going to be relevant, and it's going to be understandable, and you know, it's obviously probably not going to be as hardcore as some of those guys what they do, because
we couldn't survive it.
You'd get sued. I talked to a guy. He said, "Look, because he runs modern rites of passage on Rubenstein, and he said, yeah, look, we take 15 boys out. We're going to bring 15 boys back. You know, but in the indigenous, you know, they're trying to like keep their gene pool strong on some level. It's my thoughts. So the initiation ceremonies often do involve things which could kill you, because it's like, well, if you don't stay alive, maybe you're not meant to carry on.
Passing on your DNA.
Well, I mean, I imagine that if you're in a survival situation, you can't really afford to have weak links, because otherwise everyone's going to die, right? So it's a harsh, I've noticed it seems like the harsher the environment, the harsher the initiation ceremony seems to be. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I've noticed. Yeah,
there's definitely. I mean, that would make sense for the. But what do you consider as harsh?
Well, I saw this one, the Sartre Mawe people, I think, of Brazil. They have the bullet ant initiation. They get these like rattan gloves, and they sew like hundreds of these bullet ants with the stings facing inside.
They sew the ants alive into
these big mitts. And so they're called bullet ants because if you get stung by one, it feels like you've been shot by a bullet. And then these 10-year-old kids have to like stick their hands in there like 3 times for up to 10 minutes. And like people die from pain. And then there's the land diving people, the people in Micronesia who have to jump off these big rickety bamboo structures like 3 stories up and with like ropes made out of vine. And then sometimes it doesn't work and they die. So.
Oh my God, give me the situation shit with the guy from the Gold Coast. Any fucking day in the week?
Yeah, so there's a lot.
I mean, those are all really masculine things that you're describing.
Yeah.
Do they make the women do that? Do the women have to stick their hand in a glove?
No, actually, no, that's a good point. And then there's other ones. I know there's ones where the guys have to run over the backs of like 10 cows or something like that.
Run. Oh, right. Okay. Like.
Yeah. And then there's ones I hear of like in Africa, there's like some ritual where 8-year-old boys are like raised in a village and, you know, they have this big boogeyman sort of costume, you know, out of straw and, you know, basically a demon sort of costume. And basically for the first 8 years of their life, someone would dress up as a demon and just come and harass them and like scare the fuck out of them. Jeez. So for 8 years, it's like a really long form joke. And then for their eighth or ninth, I know it's fuzzy details. They go into a room and they're locked in the room with this demon thing that they've been petrified from birth from. And then
they have to face it.
They have to fight it. Like,
so is it just another member of the community that's dressed up?
Yeah, so they fight basically what they think is a big demon god sort of thing. And then the guys let them beat the demon god. And then the guy takes off the mask. He's like, hey, look, I'm your dad. And then probably some trust issues develop in the kid. But and then they put the mask on the kid's head as if to say,
you've beat the boss.
Yeah, you are the boss now. Welcome to the club. Let's go fuck with the next generation.
Okay.
So yeah, there has to be some kind of breaking of frame, I think.
Yeah. Some sort of identity death, I guess.
Yeah, some kind of extreme experience which takes you to the brink of being, either emotionally or physically. I think also just to find your edge, which I think a lot of, especially young men, try to do through extreme sports or just extreme drinking or just reckless risk-taking behavior. Mm-hmm. So it's something which helps you find your limits, I think. You know, just to find the outer edges of your experience.
Do you think ayahuasca is a good plant for men because it's feminine, but it's also
I think it depends on the guy. You know, I think if a guy's in touch with his emotions or too much in his yin, then you know ayahuasca can potentially unground him. You know, or make him even more flakier in a way. But dudes who are like have problems with their emotions and are very shut down and very too much in their masculine, if you know what I mean, like they can't be in their heart, they like don't even know what it's like to feel, then yeah, definitely their ayahuasca is pretty good medicine for them, as long as they can handle it, obviously, if they've got some kind of pre-existing mental condition or obviously as long as they want to do it and they're wanting to explore that stuff. Yeah, otherwise they can have a pretty intense reaction.
What other plant medicines have you tried?
I've done pretty much all of them except for toad. Yeah, 5-MeO. I haven't done that one yet.
That strikes me as strange. I don't know why. Is there a reason why you hadn't done that?
I did
feel like that would have definitely come across your sphere.
Yeah, it's come across a few times. I had a really terrifying DMT trip when I was 26. And now I just have an aversion to smoking things that are crack pipes, which is probably a good thing.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, that was so terrifying that I just can't. I'm really petrified of just blasting off. Like I don't like the sudden switch. I was slowly working my way around to it. I've had enough people telling me that it's different, but I'm also just waiting to be called because I did drink a lot of ayahuasca and nearly lost my mind from that in 2018. That was my big year. And then...
Was this part of your training?
Yeah, I was just kind of talked to a bunch of people, specifically one name, and he was just kind of like, yeah, you got to just know the medicine, so just drink every week and you'll work it out. Like, he was very much DIY, you know, do it yourself and work it out. And I would say that method of learning does have its advantages in some way. But... Then, yeah, I got really ungrounded. I was very disembodied after doing that much medicine. And I remember I was either going to do 5-MeO or Iboga. And the one guy I was going to do a 5-MeO with died tragically in a mysterious car accident. And then an Iboga lady turned up. So I said, okay, well, I guess it's Iboga. Yeah.
Well, what do you think about the mind-body connection after having done so much plant medicine?
It's real. I say I learned a lot from the mind-body connection with Qigong, like doing a lot of Qigong practice with a really experienced master dude who's actually like probably one of the most embodied people I've met now, and showing me what it's like for someone to live in a permanent flow state, which is like close to some kind of very miraculous, like the guy has abilities, you know, like it's not a lie, all the Qi stuff. And
What kind of abilities?
I saw him block a dude. He's like this 64-year-old, probably 65, but I saw him, he got a guy to punch him in the throat and he blocked the punch with his Qi. I felt his energy, like him pushing energy into me. He moves in a way that I just is not possible for the average 65-year-old. Like he's like a living kung fu master basically. And I've seen videos of him in his younger days breaking stones with his 2 fingers and bending steel with his throat and breaking steel with his dantian, all these weird feats, which a lot of people say is just sort of ornamental. It's not the real stuff, but it's still enough for you to see, oh shit, the fuck is that?
So what's the real stuff then?
I believe using it for spiritual growth. Yeah. Reaching some form of enlightenment or unification with the Tao. Yep. Yeah.
So what about all the Joe Dispenza stuff, like around you being your own healer? I mean, where do you sit with that, given that in your line of work there is another healer present?
I mean, like, it depends. Like, I'm not fully well-versed in Joe Dispenza's stuff, but I'm in two minds, man. Like, I think a lot of people can heal their own stuff, but I also know that some of the wounds you get are relational in nature. And I've healed stuff relationally with certain people where I'm like, I don't know if I could have sorted that out by myself, you know, because, you know, yeah. So like I did a lot of healing with my Qigong teacher, because he was basically helping me to deal with my dad issues, you know. So he'd mirror things back to me, and all of a sudden I would let go of all this resentment that I had against my parents, you know. And that was just from doing standing postures for 2 hours, and then him triggering me heaps and saying all these terrible things to me, and then me breaking down and then releasing this shit. So yeah, I would say it's a double-edged, it's a mixed bag. Like, definitely there's a lot of stuff you can do. I think the problem is that people can then rely too much on the healer and become like this victim rescuer dynamic sort of then evolves, which the healer can sometimes even play into. But there are also sort of curanderos who really do have these abilities to like fucking sort you out. And I don't doubt that there are people out there who can do that. But I would say that they're rare. And there's probably more fakes than there are the real deal. But I also do feel I feel there is an advantage to try and sort it out yourself, because shit doesn't come back then. Like, sometimes people can have something removed by a healer, but then something just comes back, or it comes back, or something else comes back in the place. So, yeah.
If you had an entity living within you, or you had something like attached to you, how would you know it?
Oh, the sneaky thing is sometimes you don't until it's gone, and you realize that there's a difference in the way you feel, or a difference in the way you think, and subconsciously, you just feel a shift. Because the weird things about entities is that sometimes some of these entities are so old, you think they are you. So the weird thing, when I had my own entity removal,
The solar plexus one?
yeah, after that happened, a lot of my depression left. And along with that, a lot of addictive tendencies, which I wasn't even meaning to get rid of. They just evaporated. So there was a substantial shift in basically how I felt, and the fact that addiction, suddenly all these addictions dried up. There was no addiction anymore. So I would say addictions are actually a good tell sign of an entity. It's said that, in some way, addictions are just a different form of possession. So there's many theories that certain kinds of entities feed off certain kinds of things, down to like, sugars, for example. Like if you have a heavy sugar diet, you're probably going to have candida or thrush in your system. And there's this idea that that's the actual physical manifestation of an astral entity that you might have. And I've had an experience with that basically where, I had a total microbiome gut health crisis. And at the same time during a burger trip, I was like battling this is where it gets weird. I was battling this weird octopus.
This is where it gets weird.
Well, I was battling this weird octopus dragon ancestral thing. And basically at the same time, I was coughing up sugary vomit. So I was like, what the fuck? Like literally, and I'd been fasting for like 5 days. Well, not 5 days, but like 2-3 days by that point. So I was doing this thing called torping, which is where you do, this is from my friend Julian Palmer. It's his technique because one way you can dispel malefic entities is through sound. So in South America, they call it sopla. So, you'll have, that's why sometimes you'll hear in ayahuasca films and stuff, you'll hear them go, shoo, shoo. And so you do it, or, the torping goes like, yeah. But it's going to come from the solar plexus because that's like your power center. And so it's like, sort of like a condensation of sonic intent to destroy this form. And it actually does work from my experience working with it. But I actually prefer now trying to talk to them and convincing them to leave instead. Different people have different ways of dealing with it. So I was doing that, and at the same time, every time I'd torp, I'd throw up this sugary vomit. And then I had to go on this whole no sugar keto diet, 14-day fast, clearing out my whole system of sugars. And then, this thing left me. So it's very manipulated. It's really weird. Yeah, it's really weird. But also they can influence your thoughts. There's like programs in you which might be self-destructive. And for a recent example, this year I actually did a 4-day San Pedro retreat with some like Quechua lineage shamans. And they were incredible. It was a 4-day silent retreat. And I remember day 2, day 3, I had this bizarre dream that I was like on this desert planet, similar to where Luke Skywalker's from in Star Wars. And I had to like bring this really unruly like space pirate under control. And I managed to like fucking rope him up and then shove him in this like this prison ship. And then it sort of slingshot and just disappeared into the distance. And then after that retreat, I realized I didn't really have so many negative thoughts anymore. Like I wasn't getting like this constantly seeing the worst side of everything. Suddenly I was like feeling a lot more positive. Even when stuff was shit, I'd always have this like, oh no, it's all right. This is just part of the journey. Obviously still have bad days once in a while. But so that was quite interesting. I thought I'm not sure if that was the entity responsible for that, but something shifted in that journey. And I do feel like they can, there's ideas floating around that, intrusive thought syndrome, where people get negative thoughts and thoughts that are beyond their control that cause them a lot of distress, can be entity related. I could totally understand that. Schizophrenia, certain mental illnesses, definitely I was no coincidence that after I had this exorcism, my depression went away. There's this theory that a lot of these entities actually feed off negative emotions. That's their food. So they're trying to create negative emotions inside of you because that's their food to stay locked inside of you. Yeah.
Do you think we all have entities?
I think most people have entities, yeah. Because the other thing is like in the West, in non-Western countries, I'd say most countries which are still in touch with their spiritual roots, they'll all have rituals designed to ward off negative spirits or to clear them out periodically a few times a year, and rituals to bring in the good spirits or the protector spirits or the protector beings. Like, Asian countries, Thailand, they all have these things. India, they have all their gods ask for protection. But in the West, we haven't had that for many years now. So, you just wonder how much interference is happening. But again, I hold this stuff lightly. Actually, fuck it. No, I'm in the entity camp. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier about people seeing their shamans kind of as these like godlike figures, depending on them, or seeing their healers rather, and depending on them in order to continue the healing journey. Have you ever had any experiences of transference or counter-transference?
Oh, yeah, heaps. Yeah.
How do you navigate it?
Well, I was lucky I did comedy for 13 years. And, but again, I did lose my head like for the first year without realizing it. This is where it gets really sneaky because I was drinking medicine around other people who are drinking medicine with me. They're having these powerful peak experiences. They start telling you how great you are. It's only a matter of time before you believe your own hype. But for me, the word shaman actually just means like the communicator to the spirits, right? So there's many different kinds of shamans, and there's definitely ones who are very powerful. And I've met a few in my lifetime where I'm like, this guy's fucking got skills, like, so I can totally understand why the power gets to their heads. But at the end of the day, some people love that, like love being worshipped. It's not in me. Like I don't want to be responsible for people's souls. It's a lot of responsibility. And also I'm well aware as a comedian, constantly like self-deprecating. I'm aware of my own faults and flaws. And I know that in some areas of my life, I don't have it together. So I'm very conscious of my limitations of my role. But yeah, I've definitely had people project all sorts of shit, but they have this thing called the golden shadow, which is what, whenever someone projects this shit onto you, it's actually stuff inside of themselves, which they can't see, the positive stuff. So it's like the positive side of the shadow, if you know what the shadow material stuff is. So yeah, so you as a facilitator, you'll eventually get someone thinking that you're some kind of god saint person. But you can, for the last leg of my career before I stopped, I wasn't drinking as much medicine, and that was a lot clearer because I didn't have a head full of serotonin. You're not as suggestible. So you'd have these, people who were very well-meaning, but they'd have that sort of googly-eyed freak look on them because they were full of medicine going, oh my God, you're the saint. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I just came out of a really fucked up toxic relationship, which was like terrible. So I know I'm not a saint. So it's constantly having to check yourself. That's how I was navigating it. And also just measuring when you're in a group, you got to ask yourself, is this a cult? Because there are lots of cults at the moment. It's a great time to be in a cult. Everyone's looking for something. Everyone's quite lost. So if you want to start a cult, there's heaps around the Byron Bay area. And people want the guru. That's the trap. People want the guru because then they don't have to do the work themselves. So I think it's wrong to fully blame the guy, whoever it is that you're projecting the cult leader stuff onto, because that obviously it takes two to tango,
Big time. Yeah. Big time. I think that's the hard and sticky thing about those moments, is if you're the person who has is on the lesser rung in terms of the power dynamic, like at some point you also can't just continue to be the victim.
Yeah.
You have to take responsibility that you were getting something out of that dynamic.
Yeah. And usually I'd say most people fall out of love with their shaman at some point when they realize, oh, this guy's just an fucking... And that's what I loved about my Qigong teacher. Like he was from the get-go, did not hide his flaws at all. He just did not give a shit. So you knew exactly where you stood from the get-go, that this guy, I don't want to talk negatively about him because he's still one of my main teachers and I love him, but he made no bones about hiding his humanity, which was very refreshing. It's the people who you're like, oh wow, that guy really is a saint. I feel sometimes those are guys who are hiding some kind of weird shit or, doing stuff on the sly. So
yeah, I agree with that. So you mentioned that you realized that your dad had actually been a clown, and so that was part of the journey back from shamanism to comedy. Was there more context around making the decision to...
Well, there was a death in the Northern Rivers scene. I don't know if you heard about that.
Yeah, I did. But he was quite sick, right? The guy who died in the ceremony.
Yeah, I've heard conflicting versions, and I don't really want to speak ill of the dead or people that I know, because again, I wasn't there, and I've heard so many conflicting versions. I just want to be part of the rumor mill. But that was really a reality check, because I was like, because, you know, if you read about deaths, it's usually happens in the jungle somewhere and you don't know anyone involved and you don't know what's in the brew, and, you know, it's just some horrible tourism accident. But then actually hearing about people that I knew involved on multiple levels, you're like, oh shit, this can actually happen to me as well. Like, I really felt that was like the end of the innocence of the nascent plant scene here in Australia. And so I was running a circle during that time. And yeah, I just had a minor freak out. I just had a guy who, just trying to work out how much I can share of this guy's story. Anyway, let's just say that was weighing heavily on my head, like the death stuff. And I felt fear for the first time properly of like losing someone, even though there was no chance of him. He didn't die or anything. He wasn't dead. I just had a panic attack where I thought he was dead, but he was.
Oh, okay. So you had all this stuff that happened with that, the other ceremony, like rattling around in your brain, and then you had an incident in one of your circles.
Well, it wasn't instant. It wasn't instant. He was just lying there, going through his journey.
Oh, but you had a story in your mind.
Well, that had happened like literally a few days ago. So I was like, oh shit. And then I went into circle. I was sitting there, and then I was like, man, I got to sort this out. I can't hold space anymore, you know? And then on top of that, I was going through sort of a midlife crisis, you know, and that was just a very abrupt end. Like, I was just like, okay, well, I think that's the last one for probably ever. So, and then after that, I went into this sort of free fall period for about like 5 months where I just really didn't know what I was doing. I was going through a death phase, and I was just sort of treading water, living off savings, being in a relationship with a lady, very lovely lady, which healed me as well. And then, and then I did a Qigong course, and it was internal martial arts, which meant that we had to like bash into each other in a very specific way. These other dudes would just, while breathing in a specific manner, to like, it's called the iron shirt. Anyway, it's a bit obscure, but while bashing into another guy, suddenly I was like, I think I have to do comedy again. It was very random. And then after that, I went straight to my cousin's wedding, and I for some weird reason I saw, you know, Ostentatious, the comedian.
Yeah,
he was everywhere in Toowoomba. Like everywhere I went, I was in Toowoomba for 2 days. I'd just walk past, he would be ostentatious, looking miserable in a cafe somewhere, ostentatious, eating an ice cream. And I was like, what, is this an omen from the universe? What's going on? Why ostentatious? Like, of all comedians, it's going to be ostentatious.
Because he's the only one that was where you were.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was the universe having a joke.
But fuck nowhere.
Yeah, and then that's when I talked to my uncle, and he was like, oh yeah, your dad used to do comedy, but it's like something died in him when he stopped. And I was like, fuck, I think that's how I feel now. Like I was really not, like I'd never felt that bad since prior to getting on the path. So, and then, then I got on stage, and then I was like, oh shit, I'm back.
You're back. Once you're back, you can't unback. You just have to be back.
Yeah, but it feels different now. It feels better. Yeah.
What do you think the future looks like?
Well, I think there's multiple versions. And if there's one thing I'm certain about is if someone is telling me what they think is going to happen and they're super certain about it, I don't think it's going to be what's going to happen. I think whatever it is, it's not going to be what we think it's going to be. I think the issue right now is there's multiple versions of what could happen. Like, you know,
You're being very cryptic, Nick. I need a straight answer out of you.
Oh, straight answer.
There's multiple versions that could happen based on what the way that we as
look,
humans
there's the AI apocalypse. All right, there's the environmental apocalypse. And apocalypse, I mean the great revealing. There's geopolitical conflict, nuclear weapons shit. Then there's like the fascist takeover of the government, that sort of stuff. Totalitarian, the rise of totalitarian right, which is happening in many countries right now. So there's multiple fucked up things which could happen. And then there's the alien stuff, which has come out now about the the military whistleblowers in Washington now, which is another fascinating twist on it. So the UFOs might come down and save us all.
Yeah, or probe us all.
Or probe us all. I actually think that we're stuck in a joke, like we're in a big 5D joke. We're in the setup, and then we're heading towards a punchline. I think the joke's going to be on us, but it's going to be a pullback reveal where it's leading us down these other ways with all this other stuff. Like,
yeah, okay.
But actually, what the punchline will be, who fucking knows? And when it's going to hit, I don't know that much. What I feel is happening on a spiritual level is that we're going through the period of separation, like big polarization, which is a part of the stage of alchemy, spiritual alchemy. So, we're going through this big polarization. No one believes in the same shit anymore. Everyone's fighting with each other. And I think maybe that's just where it's meant to be right now. But eventually we'll reach the end of that stage and then we'll start coming back together. I predict, I could be wrong, I predict there will be a cull. There'll be a big cull.
Like another COVID or something worse?
I got the message that COVID is just a preview. So
please God, no.
So yeah, I mean, but I have.
How did you get that message?
Again, this is where it's like, how do you really trust the messages you get from the other worlds? And also, I've learned a lot about prophecy is only based on the given situation in the present moment, the present information.
Yeah. It's like when you get a live blood analysis, it's only a snapshot of that exact moment in your body.
So this is where I went through the whole doomsday phase where I was like, oh, it's fucking ending. Everyone's an idiot. Why don't they? But then I just realized, man, this is not a healthy way to be. This is just a buzzkill. I'm not fun to be around. And also, like, so what? If it's going to hell, what's the point of being fucking pessimistic about it? And so then I started thinking about how it's really important to find joy in the everyday, and that, like, if anything, it'll just make me try and be more present. And so I really don't know, man. Like, I all bets are off. This is where I'm like, you know what? All our predictions are based on information that we know. And you never know when new information is going to come in that's going to change everything. And so percentage-wise, I'd say I feel like we're going through a birthing process that's going to be a big mass initiation and a big wake-up call to everyone who isn't already on board, which might involve a lot of people dying and potentially a lot of really bad stuff. But this could also be the forcing function to drive humanity to the next stage of evolution, which could be, I do feel that whatever we are in right now as humans is only really, we're still in a pupal larval phase. So what the higher, I mean, you read about all these higher level yogis and the powers they had of like telekinesis and, fucking all crazy telepathy, all these strange powers that all these, and cities they call them, all these advanced yogic practitioners had. So I wonder if that's actually at the natural state of being that we could actually be at if we lived in a more harmonized way to the world, and maybe these latent abilities will be potentially forced into awakening, or mass high levels of consciousness might be forced to be shaken awake by basically fucking horrendous
circumstances,
cataclysmic circumstances. So yeah, I mean, there's some people who are like, oh no, everything's going to be fine, and you're just thinking, negatively. But I feel like for everything that we've done to the planet, there has to be some kind of karmic balance to that. I'm not sure if we can get away with that. Like, it just seems to, I don't know, unrealistic.
Well, let's end on a positive note. What do you...
But the thing is, that is a positive note.
Yeah, no, you're right.
What better time to be alive
to see
than
what the
fucking crazy times? Like,
yeah.
All right, look, I might live to eat those words, but like, it was the way I view it is like, we're in a reality TV show created by high dimensional beings, and before COVID, that was kind of like You know when The Simpsons got really boring, it just became really repetitive. It's like season 9 through to season 34 now, and everyone's lost interest because it's just boring. I feel like that's what happened to humanity for these high dimensional beings. So then they're like, oh man, this is really boring. This show sucks now. So let's fucking crank up the novelty. Yeah. So we'll crank up the heat, elect Trump, COVID, throws some viruses in. And now everything's just like chucking the aliens, chucking the AI, the robots. So I really feel like these are really like fucking liminal times. And I think it's exciting to be alive right now. And
me too.
I actually feel like I'm better equipped for these times than when things were all going well for everyone. I don't work well when like that.
Yeah. You're the psychodrama.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm used to the psychodrama. So I'm like, yeah. So I think if you've done a lot of ayahuasca and plant medicine, that's good training. That's good state training for these times ahead.
Well,
yeah.
Thanks so much for chatting with me.
Yeah. Was that positive enough to end up?
It was fine. The last question was just going to be like, what do you do to have fun? But I feel like
I go swimming.
in the ocean.
In the ocean, nature. Lake Ainsworth is pretty good. Yeah. What do I do for fun? Sauna. I like sauna.
Yeah.
I love writing. Yeah. Writing, reading. I'm pretty simple dude.
That is a lie.